Okay, so we basically have all the ingredients set up here to make the pizza. If you're unsure about your yeast, just put the required yeast for the recipe, which is 1.5 teaspoons, and say like 2 tablespoons of lukewarm water, tepid water, and see if it activates. I'm not concerned about the yeast. The yeast is still active. I've used it recently, so I'm just going to proceed knowing that it's activated. So we're going to put in 1.5 teaspoons yeast, lukewarm water, I'm going to add the sugar, that's 1 tablespoon, and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You can use any oil. You could use vegetable oil, whatnot. It does not have to be olive oil. And it's any oil. Stir it around. And basically you're just going to let this sit. What we want to do is make sure that the yeast activates and blooms. So we'll be back in a few minutes. Check that out. Say 10 minutes. Well, that exceeded 10 minutes. I was busy at work, so I wanted to check this in 10 minutes. It's been an hour and a half. But anyways, the yeast is activated. We're just now going to stir in the flour, and then we're going to stir in the salt. You're just going to do a rough stir in. How much flour? Anywhere between 2.5 cups, 3 cups. Pour that in, stir that around. I can throw in the salt. It's 2 teaspoons of salt. Again, we could have just added that to the flour before we mixed it in. Oh, no rest for the wicked. Again, all we're doing is doing a rough mix. The yeast is going to be working that dough by itself. All we're going to do is have it covered. Again, it's just going to be about like a little sticky. That's basically it. How much water did we put in? About 1 cup of lukewarm water. Put in like a cool place, either if you don't have a lid to the bowl, saran wrap. Even if your bowl can fit a plate, stick a plate on it. If you need to, whatever, like a cloth. We have the lid, so the lid goes in. That will just sit there for a few. It's been about 10 minutes since I combined these. What we're going to do is we're just going to knead this dough, well-floured surface, and just be working into it. What I also do is, if you have a bread maker, you can dump everything into the bread maker and let the bread maker on the dough setting do the kneading for you. When the results are relatively the same. You don't have to actually go through this, and you can get busy back to work and have the bread maker do the work for you. It's already being kneaded by the bread maker, and it's actually very quick. And just working in that dough. And then what we're gonna do is when the time's, oh, there's the timer, there's 10 minutes. Take that ball, put it into a greased bowl, just there. And you're just gonna place that ball right in the center of your bowl. And then all you do is just let it sit. Have it covered, either with a cloth, saran wrap, or a lid. You just want it sealed. And ideally, the longer you let this rest, the more complex your pizza is going to be, the more delicious that crust is going to be. I would say at a minimum, hour, but you could go 24 hours with this. Okay, so it's been an hour and a half, and as you can see how much that has risen. So we're just going to let it do its thing. But also, if one's rushed for time, you can actually take this out, divide it. This recipe would make 2 pizzas. So an hour is sufficient time, but to get a little bit more complexity to that dough, let it rest. Okay, so we're about 3 to 4 hours later. We can see how much it's changed in the bowl, how much it's come up. So we're just going to like form it and then divide it into say 2 balls. Let those balls just rest. If you wanted to, you could proceed, take these out, form it, roll them, and cook it. I'm just going to let it rest for a bit before we actually roll them out into floured surface. We're not kneading anymore, we already did knead it. We're just gonna form it into 2 balls. So just forming it in. And then simply I'm just gonna divide it into 2. And then for each one I'm just gonna form a ball. Form it underneath. You can leave it on the counter with a towel on it. I'm just gonna put it on a board. And just really quick. So I'm going to put it on the board. I'm going to put a slight little towel over them. That's basically the extent. And then I'll just move this to the side, let this sit for an hour. And then we'll come back and we'll roll it out into the actual pizzas. Okay, so we're about time to cook the pizza. We can see here that it's formed nice balls. We're going to put it on a floured surface area. We're going to roll it out to put into pans. You want to have the pans with a little bit of cornmeal. If you don't have cornmeal, you can grease the pan a bit. Just don't put it on an empty one. The dough may stick. So cornmeal or a little bit of oil grease to grease the pan. We can roll it out. Well-floured rolling pin too. And then you can proceed just to roll it out. Try to get it as much of a circle as you can. Again, it's not that big of a deal if it's not a full circle. You can form it in the pan. There we go, we can take that. Put a bit on the large one over here. And again, you can just form it to the pan. And then we'll proceed to put on the toppings. But that's basically it. We'll reform that in a sec. All right, so you get the dough in your pans, kind of form them to the edges. That sweet pepper sauce that we made previously is what we're going to use as a topping. We did that on the other pizza that we put the al pastor on as well. So just take this. Okay. So put a little bit of cheese on the base of the bottom. Then we can proceed with putting some toppings and a little bit more. So make it your masterpiece. All right, so the toppings, we'll put some of the chicken on. Well, maybe I'll do this. The onions, sauteed onions, peppers. And the beauty with making your own pizza, it can be like as grand or as simple as you want, especially with the toppings. Shredded chicken that was cooked and homemade salsa just from the peppers and the tomatoes from the garden with onions roasted in the oven, created a salsa. And then we just cooked the chicken, slow cooked in the slow cooker in the salsa. So, and then just when it was done, we just shredded the chicken. So this was, again, leftovers from another meal, which is great to do with your pizza. You're like, hey, got leftovers, toppings. You can see that you can take a little bit of meat and actually make this as a great meal with leftovers. That's it. And again, tons of toppings. All right, and then just top it off with some more cheese. It's amazing how inexpensive it is to make pizza. So these go in the oven, 450 degrees for 18 to 20 minutes. Again, 450 degrees, 18 to 20 minutes. Okay, well, they're fresh out of the oven. All right, so just take the pizza out of the oven, let it cool, get it on a cutting board, slice it up, and enjoy.